Something just happened in the Canadian electric vehicle market that nobody saw coming, and honestly, I am still processing it. Tesla, yes, that Tesla, has just slashed the price of the Model 3 Premium by over 50% in Canada. We are not talking about a small promotional discount. We are not talking about a limited time clearance event. We are talking about a brand new entry price of just $39,490 Canadian. That is it. That is what it costs to drive home a Model 3 right now in this country. And if you have been following the Canadian EV market for any length of time, you know that just a few months ago, the exact same Model 3 in its Long Range AWD configuration was sitting at $79,990. $80,000 nearly. So when I say Tesla just cut the price by over 50%, I mean it literally. That is not a headline exaggeration. That is the actual math. $40,000 gone, just like that. And the question everyone in Canada is now asking is simple. Does this change everything? I think it might. Let me walk you through exactly what happened, what it means for Canadian buyers today, and whether or not this deal is actually as good as it looks on paper. Because there is a catch. There is always a catch. And this one is worth understanding before you rush to Tesla's website and hit that order button. Let's start with the context. Because this story does not begin with Tesla. It begins with trade policy, tariffs, and a very unusual deal between Canada and China that flipped the economics of the entire Canadian EV market on its head. Earlier this year, Canada implemented 25% counter tariffs on American-made vehicles in direct response to steel and aluminum duties coming out of Washington. What that meant in practical terms was brutal for Tesla. The Model 3 was being built at Tesla's Fremont California plant and shipped to Canada. And suddenly every single one of those cars was carrying a massive tariff surcharge. The result was that the cheapest available Model 3 in Canada ballooned to nearly $80,000. For context, that same car in the United States was sitting at around $37,000 US. Canadians were being asked to pay more than double. Sales essentially collapsed. The Model 3 became a near impossible sell at that price point. And Tesla's Canadian market share took a serious hit, as buyers either waited it out or moved toward competitors. Then came what some in the industry have started calling the Canola for Cars trade deal, a new Canada-China trade framework that established a managed import quota for Chinese-built electric vehicles at a dramatically reduced tariff rate of just 6.1%. That is not a misprint. 6.1% versus 25% on American-made cars. The math is staggering. And Tesla, being Tesla, moved fast. The company shifted its Canadian Model 3 supply chain away from Fremont and started sourcing directly from Giga Shanghai, its massive manufacturing complex in China. And the moment that supply chain switch went live, the savings came crashing through to Canadian buyers in the form of the single biggest price drop this market has ever seen on a Tesla vehicle. The new Model 3 Premium rear-wheel drive starts at $39,490 Canadian dollars. It delivers 463 kilometers of range on the NR-CAN combined cycle, and it sprints from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 4.2 seconds. For under $40,000. Think about what that means in the context of the Canadian market. That is not just a competitive EV price. That is genuinely aggressive pricing that puts the Model 3 in a bracket it has never occupied before in this country. You are now comparing it against Chevy Equinox EVs, against the Volkswagen ID.4, against mid-range Hyundai Ioniq 5 trims. Tesla did not just lower the price, it repositioned the entire car into a completely different competitive segment overnight. And then there is the performance variant. Tesla also cut the Model 3 performance by 17%, dropping it from $89,990 all the way down to $74,990. That is a $15,000 reduction on a car that still produces 460 horsepower and does 0 to 100 in 3.1 seconds. The performance trim continues to be built at Fremont, which is why its discount is smaller. it is still subject to Canadian counter-tariffs on American-made vehicles. But a 17% price cut is still a serious move, and it brings the performance into a range where it becomes a genuine alternative for buyers who were previously looking at the BMW i4 M50 or the Polestar 2 Performance. Now here is where we have to talk about the catch, because there is one, and it matters. The Shanghai-built Model 3 Premium RWD does not qualify for Canada's $5,000 electric vehicle affordability program rebate. The reason is straightforward. Canada's EVAP program requires vehicles to be manufactured in a country that has a free trade agreement with Canada. China does not have that agreement, even under the new quota framework. So unlike the Chevrolet Equinox EV or certain other Canadian-eligible models, your new $39,490 Tesla will not get that $5,000 federal rebate knocked off the price. Your out-of-pocket sticker remains $39,490 before taxes and fees. Now in fairness, $39,000 for this car is still extraordinary value. But it is worth knowing that a rebate-eligible competitor priced at $44,000 could effectively cost you less at the point of sale once that $5,000 federal credit is applied. Do that math before you walk into any dealership or open any Tesla configurator. Also worth noting, Tesla quietly removed the Model 3 Premium Long Range AWD from the Canadian lineup entirely. That vehicle had been priced at $79,990, and it is simply gone. There is no mid-tier option anymore between the entry-level Premium RWD at $39,000 and the Performance at $74,000. That is a big gap, and buyers who wanted all-wheel drive capability without paying performance money no longer have that option. Whether Tesla fills that gap with a Premium AWD variant down the road remains to be seen. But right now, you are choosing between one or the other. So what does all of this actually mean for the Canadian market? In the short term, it means pressure, enormous pressure, on every other EV brand selling in this country. Hyundai, Kia, GM, Volkswagen, Ford, all of them have to reckon with the fact that a Model 3 now competes directly in their price territory. More importantly, it signals that the Canadian EV landscape is entering a new phase, one shaped as much by geopolitics and trade routes as it is by technology and brand power. Tesla is not the only company that could pivot its supply chain towards Shanghai-built product under this new tariff structure. If other automakers follow, Canadian consumers could see a wave of price drops across the entire segment. The bottom line for anyone watching from Canada is this. If you have ever wanted a Model 3 but could not stomach the price, that excuse just disappeared. $39,490 with 463 kilometers of range and Tesla's supercharger network behind it is a legitimately compelling offer. Just go in knowing the rebate situation, understand the AWD gap in the lineup, and make sure you verify delivery timelines, because first customer deliveries are expected in the coming weeks.